How you doing today, man?
Good. How you doing?
I am doing great. It is so good to talk to you again. One, because we have a little bit of I guess, a secondary history. As we talked about last time, you and my brother were playing on some of the same Little League All-Star teams in Carrollton, Texas back in the
No
day.
doubt. No
But two,
doubt.
us talking means that we're embarking on another college football season, and our two teams get to meet once again this year to really kick things off as a one versus three right now.
Oh yeah.
Before we get to the football, Anthony, I do want to ask because you obviously have a family. We'll maybe get into some fatherhood and some youth training stuff before it's all said and done. Did y'all have a good summer?
Oh my goodness, bro, Trey. It's been a bumpy summer. It was a good summer. It's a lot of life transitions. Just ended up moving back to Columbus, Ohio from Jacksonville, Florida. Uh, Older two kids graduated. One's going to play baseball at the University of Findlay. One's going to go to school up here in Ohio State. Then we got another one, but it comes with moving, new schools, um, you know, chaos, renovating a house, living at a farm away. Right? It's just life. And I think so many times people in life like get overwhelmed as opposed to appreciating the process and what the process does. Allows you to be more organized, more intentional with the things that you do because you have some proximity things that are out of your control, aka driving an hour.
Hmm.
Uh, but it is what it is, and then you're grateful that I finally have my family in the same state that has been different for the last 2 years. So I'm grateful for it, right? And they've adjusted well. And I think sometimes too, as parents, as we try to always do the right thing for our kids, I think sometimes we forget how resilient they are because the most important thing is the family unit and both parents being there and being able to pour into them. And regardless of where that is, like that is the number one thing.
Well, let me ask you this because your dad was a football coach when you were growing up, which inevitably meant that you were moving around a little bit. Have you been able to impart your own experience in helping your kids deal with these new surroundings at these various stops?
I think all parenting, like coaching, uh, you have to know what works for each child because, like each child, I always say this: each child is parented differently, but the standard
Mm,
is always the standard.
yeah.
And so through that, you try to be really intentional with what you do. Like, let's say you have a child that if they're very routine, what is the plan, right? And then you intervene with making sure that some plans are changed and seeing how they respond and being able to walk through that as opposed to having to walk through that when it's a life change on their own. Like that to me is coaching, that to me is parenting. So, I mean, here's the deal. Here's what they don't want to hear. Uh, yeah, we moved all the time and buckle up, buttercup. Like, this is what I did. That doesn't fly, but saying, hey, this is just part of the process. And here's the good, like, you can do hard things. And that though I don't necessarily perceive them being hard, doesn't mean that they don't perceive it as being hard. But you know what? You can do hard, difficult things. It's just a hard, difficult thing that will have an end, but you got to go through it and grow from it. And what are the growth opportunities here? Let them understand it. Talk it out with them. Say, yeah, man, that's great. You did a great job. I know that you're gassed and you're struggling and you're tired, and some of your free time has been sucked up because you got a 2 hour drive every day back and forth. But here are the good things that I see from it, and you're doing a great job. And like that's what it is. Just saying, hey, just get through it. Like you're not going to grow from that. I think so many times, hell, Ryan Day alluded to it. Uh, who else did? My guy Scotty Scheffler alluded to it. It's just different circumstances. But when you win a championship, yeah, you won the championship in 2024, but little did everybody forget that you were calling for his job after the Michigan loss. That's a fact. Or 2 months later, you're talking about the recruiting class, or you're talking about how we don't have any money in NIL, or Texas Tech is now beating us in recruiting. Like what? Like, you know what I'm saying? Or what are you going to do in this Texas game? Right? You got Paul Feinbaum talking about they're good, they're not elite, they're going to get ran out of their own stadium versus Texas, basically, is what he said. Like all those things. But you just won a national championship literally 7 months ago. Not even 7 because it happened on January. Well, actually 7 because now it's, I don't even know the day, but it's August 22nd.
Yeah.
So 7 months ago in 2 days, you won a natty. But yeah, that's why it's imperative that you try to embrace and learn everything from the process and being able to get 1% of 1% better every single day because it keeps you focused on the mission and the process, not just the goal and the destination. Because the goal and the destination, or excuse me, the destination is always changing, whether you're in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, even your 40s later on, it's changing, man. So that can't be what you define yourself by.
Championships are a funny thing. Gosh, you just said so much there that reminds me. You and I are aligned philosophically, including doing hard stuff so that you walk around the world and it feels a little bit easier. It's the whole lift heavy so the world feels lighter mantra. But as far as championships are concerned, it's funny how fleeting that feeling of joy is with a championship. That it lasts for a couple of moments maybe, but you're right, life goes on, and at the end of the day when you think back to the successes that you've had, it's less about that singular mountaintop moment versus the climb that it took to get there.
I joke. I mean, I coached Ohio State football last year for the first 6 months in the weight room. I have a national championship. I got one from 14. I got 2 national championships. I got 5 pairs of gold pants for beating Michigan. I got Big Ten rings. When I played, I got 2 state championship rings from Highland Park, Texas in wrestling, UIL, old school, right? 98, 99, right? So, or maybe it was 99 and 2000. Yeah, 99 and 2000. You know where they are? They're in my gun safe, you know? And it's not about the ring or the meaning, but it was the journey and the process and the memories of who you did it with and the hard things that you did to get there. And that's what you remember and that's what you cherish about it. It's not the tangible, right? It's the experience. And that for people that have never done that, they just don't know because they view it as my identity is in what they're doing now consistently all the time, as opposed to, you know, them as a player or a coach understanding all the things that it took, all the people, all the practices, all the recoveries, all the training to be able to go win one. Like that they can't comprehend that because they never get that unless they work in a great organization. They never get that feeling of accomplishment, right? It's just like, did you win the quarter? All right, on to the next quarter. Well, what was your performance review? You know, like, and on to the next, and you just collect a paycheck. It's just a job versus something that you're wholeheartedly passionate about doing. And that's so I always go back, like Urban said, love what you do, where you do it, and who you do it with. And that's the most important thing. You can't ever lose sight of.
That's right. This life, happiness in this life is all about experiencing the good and the bad with the people that you care about the most. Now, if all of those trophies, all those accolades are locked away in the gun safe, and this is going to be a deep, nerdy question here that speaks to me knowing you when you were a kid. I think you're 4 years younger than me. But when you were playing the all-star baseball team with my brother in the Carrollton Farmers Branch Little
Oh
League,
yeah,
I think you rocked the rec specs, if I'm remembering correctly, back in the day.
one
Did you
hundred
rock the
percent.
rec specs? Am I remembering that
Oh,
right?
Chris Sabo, man, third baseman for the Reds. Of course,
Exactly.
I had him for
At what
sure.
point did you stop rocking the rec specs? Because I feel like that by the time we all kind of reconvened when my brothers were at Highland Park when you weren't rocking the rec specs anymore.
No, it's because it's called contacts. You know, I needed something that wouldn't fog up or get sweaty because I sweated all over the place. But yeah, yeah, it's just good times. But you love that. It was funny. I was just talking to Jay Hoot, and Jay was the former head strength coach for Northwestern for a long time, and it's funny that you brought up those memories because I got a younger one, and I don't go to a lot of like high school football games. One, because I was coaching and I never had the opportunity to. But when you got little kids, they got to be saturated in that. I talked about it on the Bobby Carpenter show that I do, former teammate of mine, and he was absolutely right. It's like you got to submerge them. We talk about submerging them into culture at Ohio State, which is exactly why the mid-year guys have way more success than the guys that come in the summer now in college football than ever before, because it's a full submersion in the culture. Because when they show up in June and those other guys have already been through it, like the older guys, like they're like +2. Like the guy's like, what does that even mean? Like you just got there. But when you learn very early in January what it means, but you got to saturate your kids into what are they trying to attain. And from little league, right? Like even going to a Newman Smith game and watching football or watching baseball or going to wrestling, duels, right? It's like you're in, like I wanted, like Bobby was talking about, like I wanted to be that guy at Lancaster. And it was just local dudes, right? And it's the same thing. Then when you get into high school, you're looking at colleges. And then you always follow the pro guys or your favorite team, but that's who you resonate with. I grew up and I remember I loved Tom Rathman because he had a flat top and he was a fullback and I played fullback. And I loved Dick Buckus because of the linebacker. And it was like you wanted to emulate your game after that. But if you don't go to those events and submerge in, how are they ever going to feel that experience, which could ultimately motivate them when it does get hard, that this is why we do train in season, right? Like it's funny too. Now you got me in a soapbox.
Let's go.
It's so funny now that I've been having some realizations. It's so interesting because parents and team sports, it's like you got to play lacrosse all year, or you got to do baseball all year, or football's a little bit different because you can only play football in the fall. Now you got 7-on-7, mind you, but here's the thing: my dad and I was a 3-sport athlete going into high school. When it was football season, I played football. When it was wrestling season, I wrestled. When it was baseball season, I played baseball. But we trained throughout.
Mm.
And that's the greatest equalizer. But I never did wrestling when it was football season or baseball. I never did baseball during wrestling or football season. I did baseball when it was baseball. And guess what? I was good at all of them. And it was because I was saturated into that sport, singularly focused on what I was going to accomplish. And then I trained throughout the process in a safe and programmed and progressed manner. And that's how you do it. But now it's like we're expecting these kids to go to a football practice and then also pick up a lacrosse stick so they don't lose any. You ain't losing nothing. You're missing the process of what the sport of football allows you to gain to go play that other sport. Because they're never going to be able to be like, oh, I'm focused on football, because they're thinking about the next thing, which is, dang, man, right after this practice, I got to go do lacrosse work. That's terrible. That's a terrible mindset to have, because then they're not feeling it at football. And you can't confuse activity with achievement, and you become a shadow of your elite self because you're doing all these other things. It's crazy talk. Now you got me on soapbox.
No. I love this topic because my kids are also playing multiple sports right now. And we encourage them to do so because, and I think that people are starting to wise up to the idea of burnout, especially having a kid do one thing at all times throughout the year. Now, there are some exceptions. There are some kids that's the only thing that they want to do, and good for them for that. But we've encouraged our kids to try other sports and activities to figure out what it is that they enjoy, while also trying to explain to them also that you may like something right now that you may not like at all in a couple of years. And if so, that's okay. Again, it gets back to the whole journey versus this idea of what that finish line looks like. The reality is that there usually isn't a finish line. The finish line just keeps moving further and further ahead. But throughout that time, assuming that you're doing these different things, you're continuing to make your body, your mind, and even your spirit stronger throughout that process as you learn how to be a better individual athlete, but also a teammate too, somebody working with another group of people for that united goal.
Yeah, and you might not even be the best on that team. So you got to work at being the best on that team. And what does that person who is the best do that I don't do? Or, I mean, like even the correlations between football and lacrosse are so easy. I mean, it's man within a zone. So why? And it's gotten significantly more physical over the last decade. It's like, why wouldn't I want physical dudes? Or if you do that one sport, like what I've realized too, it's okay. So yeah, you play one sport. You got into high school and you're one sport only now. Great, cool, love it. Are you training in the off season to build you up to have another great season? Or are you conditioning for a sport that you're not going to play for 6 months? Why would you do that? I don't need you to be in shape for that sport in August. I need you to be in shape for that sport in January and February. But right now we need to work on acceleration and speed, and we need to get bigger and faster, or bigger and stronger. Well, what does that look like? Well, that's an off-season program. And here's what it is. It's just so funny how, you know, we just we miss those opportunities for growth. And it's like, well, why are kids getting hurt? Because they're not strong. They don't
Yeah.
have tissue density and resiliency built up with a foundation in the weight room. Yeah, I am a strength coach, people, but I also have worked at Ohio State and in the NFL, and I know what those people need. And they need tissue density and resiliency, and that only comes through eating iron the right way, programmed to progress, period.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of young kids that get into sports, they clearly don't understand how to use their bodies yet, how to move properly. So even
Yeah.
doing some
Movement
basic
mechanics. Yeah.
basic fundamental things. Like I coach my daughter's volleyball team. We have them do the agility ladder. And I know things like that can become a little bit gimmicky, but where I'm doing that because I see these kids that want it, but they also don't quite understand how to use their legs beneath them just yet. And having them move their feet quickly in and out of these little spaces has actually paid dividends for us because not to dwell on championships. So we just won a championship a couple weeks back in our summer league, and that is the result of us trying to help them understand how they need to move for that particular sport to find successes with the other things that we're teaching them, bumping, setting, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I work with the Columbus Fury, who's a pro volleyball team, and it's funny because
Oh,
they're
nice.
pros, but they don't like when they get to the pro level, it's like the fundamental stop. And it's not like if you're a middle blocker that has to get to the outside, it's how do I take a good lateral step first to then a crossover to then be able to have the proper mechanics for launching, right? So I'm not bringing my knees in, right? You see a lot of that with young ladies. They don't know the proper mechanics of plyometrics. Like that helps a lot. Body control, when I jump, then reload and reset and re-jump. I call it load, break, launch, land. But it's like, am I working on the fundamentals that correlate to their game within the setting of strength conditioning and plyometric work? Yes. But if you don't work on those fundamentals all the time, which is crazy. I literally on my whiteboard, I was talking to their volleyball coach. It was like, what does a practice at Ohio State look like, and how or the NFL, and how intentional it is. You just don't go out there and play volleyball. Like, we just don't go out there and play football. It's literally right here. This is what we do. We activate. You walk through. Team dynamic. We strike every practice. Then you go to punt. Then you go to indie. Then you go to inside run. Then you go to another indie or a teach period. Then you go offense, defense together, where it's like you recognize, you communicate, you execute. Then you go to a team period. Then you go to your 7-on-7, right? Volleyball, it could be 3-on-3, 4, whatever. I don't really know the practices of volleyball, but what was that setting like? Then you go to your team or a teach or an indie, or maybe even a little walkthrough. Then you go to your team, and then that team, as it evolves, becomes situational. Like that's a practice. That's how you do it. So then how are you structuring your practices that way? Then also realizing what's a low, medium, and high day through intensity and volume. How far is that predicated to the game that I play? Everything has to be very, very intentional, but it's always programmed and progressed. And if you understand what that is, then you have a really locked in focused team that's also getting better, but they're going to be ready to play the games. And I always say this too. So all the people that are out there that listen, that coach their kids, it's like, are we trying to win a game? And let's just talk about it. It's on Saturday. Are we trying to win the game on Wednesday, or are we trying to win the game on Saturday? Because I can't win it on Wednesday, but I could lose it for sure. Right. So like, what is the ultimate goal? But you can't ever lose sight of the fundamentals. Urban Meyer said it's why I invented the different striking machine. We were elite at hand striking, hand placement, and loaded stances. That was the difference. So we do that every day, every day.
Yeah, it reminds me of the saying practice makes perfect is actually an incomplete statement. Perfect practice makes perfect. Sloppy practice makes for sloppy habits on game days. So you need to make sure that you're deliberate with what it is that you're doing in those practice times so that when those moments matter a little bit more in terms of wins and losses for the games themselves, that you're doing what you need to put yourself in position to succeed. That's not to say that you'll do it every time, but just gets back to the idea of not only working hard, but working smart to give yourself a chance at those successes.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
Oh man, we could go on all day about this. I want to ask you one more quick thing because I promise we
Do
will
it.
get to Texas Ohio State. Because of how much experience you have as a personal trainer, the one thing that I'm struggling to figure out is the proper amount of resistance training in season. So, in your opinion, and I know
Easy.
every sport is a little bit different, what is the right amount of resistance training when you're in the throes of a season, Anthony?
Always remember this: volume is the killer, intensity is always king.
Hmm.
Like that's what it is. And I'm not talking about intensity as like we just go through a bunch of warm-ups. And I also want to predicate this on the fact that everybody should be programmed to progress. I started training really young. But I loved it, right? Like I was all into it. And a lot of it was body weight, kettlebell, plates, not spinal loaded, but then it was progress, right? So goblet squat to a front squat to a back squat, whatever.
How early are you talking about? Because there's a common belief that you shouldn't be strength training before you hit puberty.
But what is strength training, right? So pull-ups are fantastic. We know that grip strength, we know at our age is a great indicator of overall health. Your VO2 max, what is that? Being able to go get that tested, great indicator of your overall health. So there are things that you can do. Like I just remember, like I did manual neck. My dad would just when I was growing up, my presence for me was I got a neck harness with like a 10-pound plate. Then I could crush that, and then I got a 25-pound plate. Then I got a 45-pound plate. Then I had a 45, a 25, and a 10. And once I could do another plate, I got another plate. Like those were my gifts. But like body weight squat, like whatever you want to do, just like doing that and and having good patterns, right? Good hinge patterns, plyometric sprinting, all good things, right? So we here at the Armory up in Columbus, Ohio, it's like when you're in sixth grade, we can start to put you in a program, but then it's predicated upon where you are and the skill set that I call it, physical literacy that you have. But you start out very fundamental with just hinging, and it's very low volume, low weight, appropriate amount of volume, and focusing on the technique. And then once you've mastered that, then you go to the next. And
Making sure that you have proper movement patterns before
that's
you
it,
start adding
100%.
weight.
100%.
Yeah.
But again, you can still do that with attitude and intensity, meaning I show up and I show out and I got a lot of juice. And like that's the thing that people don't really understand. A program is there's a lot of great programs out there, but it's the program's only as great as the people that coach it and the mindset of the athletes to go through it, you know? So I think that there's a lot of benefit, but the benefit has to be, are we teaching the proper movement patterns that will set them up for success in the weight room so that they don't view the weight room as a place they don't want to be, but they view it as a place that can allow them to be better at their sport. And better at their sport means a healthy, better version of you, right? And then through there becomes strength. And then strength allows you to have more power, and you have to train those qualities 100%. But the foundation of all of it is strength when dosed appropriately, predicated upon age and technique. And it is really that simple.
Are movement patterns predicated on the individual a little bit too? I feel like there's people who are just naturally more fluid through the hips. Not to say that you can't teach somebody who is stiff in their lower body to be a little bit more fluid, but there are some people that just have that natural range of motion that others might not.
100%. There's different physiological differences that we have. Heck, I mean, I'll give you a prime example. There's a guy was from Ohio State. He's playing in the NFL. He is as strong as you can imagine, but I don't need to necessarily, and I always view things as a risk reward in the program design, but the dude needs to accelerate better. Well, it's not that I need to get him stronger or even more powerful for him to be able to accelerate faster. He has terrible ankle mobility. So sometimes just because of the length of people's bones and their hips and certain things, it's like, all right, they can't bend like that, but I know what's impeding that, and it's this. So let's work on this while we continue to work on that. And do I have to give them a load to what? Give them a t-shirt? That's why I'm like so anti 1,000-pound club, right? For high schools, because, all right, you're telling me that the kid that weighs 200 pounds got that, but what about the kid that weighs 140? It should be the kid make an improvement, right? So all of a sudden the kid jumps up, he weighs 140 pounds, but now he's able to squat better because his patterns have gotten better, because I'm not worried about the weight necessarily on him, but about him doing it right. Great. Let's reward that, because we want him to show up and show out and be consistent, because consistent work works, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. And we also mistake the fact that not all of them are going to be high school starters or, college athletes or professional athletes. It's the goal should be how do we make them to be the best version of themselves? And it really has become what is required now, and even in college. It's how do you keep kids in the building? How does Ohio State not have any transfers after last year's season in a really highly competitive rooms? It's because they feel that they're getting developed and they got great personal relationships with their coaches, and they're getting developed in the weight room and on the field and in their unit rooms, and then they stay. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, we want you to go have success. They just didn't have it here in Ohio State. You were a great value add. Let's go to another place, but we set you up for success to go do that. And I look at it even now as I'm the, intern for a junior high football team. It's like my goal is I'm going to coach every single kid as hard as I possibly can because I want them to come back for an 8th grade season. But how do you do that? You work on their stances, you work on their starts, you work on their hand placement, you work on making sure that they know the why and why they're doing what they're doing, so that when they do pull through, like who's the guy that I'm going to block? It's that guy. It's not the parent out there yelling, block somebody. No crap, Sherlock. Like they're trying to block somebody, but does the kid know who to block? That's what we got to work on.
Yep.
And when they do know that, it allows them to play faster and it allows them to have success, which means what? They come back and have another year next year. Because you never know, even at this level and at your daughter's level, like you don't know what that kid is going to grow into or what position they're going to play in high school. There's some that you do know, but there's a lot that you don't.
I hear these parents at my daughter's age, and she just started 5th grade, and club volleyball is massive right now, not just in
Oh, yeah.
Austin, but across the country. The problem with club volleyball, though, Anthony, is that they're already specializing these kids. Like they're playing a position in baseball, and it's like you have no idea. I know you can look at the parents and sometimes have a pretty good guess of the body type that the kid is going to grow into, but you don't know just yet. So why would you not teach them every necessary skill to be successful at volleyball, and maybe not even necessarily indoor volleyball? Maybe they shift and play beach volleyball, which that's one of the fastest growing sports at the college level right now, versus specializing them as outside hitters or middles or defensive specialists or servers or setters. Like let them learn everything, and gradually that will work itself out as they start playing more in school and when they do finally get into the club scene.
I would say part of that is like some of the saying goes, if I specialize in nothing, I'm not special, because they don't pay a guy that can play guard or tackle. There's some, but they pay left tackles to play left tackle because they're a left tackle. That's why they get paid. You know what I mean? And so I think that there's some, and that's the problem. I think people don't have a good, clear picture as to what their child is. I know my oldest who's playing college baseball. When he grew up, it was like, dude, you're playing outfield, you play first base, and you pitch. We'll see what happens. You get into high school. Okay, you're throwing in the, low 80s, right? You're hitting 81, 83, probably not going to be a college pitcher, have a lot of good movement. You're a lefty. You understand the art of pitching, right? You're not just throwing gas. So you know how to like manipulate the strike zone and use eye level changes and speed, right? To get guys out. That's a great value, but it's not where you're going to be in college. So you're going to play outfield. So can you hit, right? Can you add value? One of the greatest lessons I learned in the league was I was like, man, I'm a linebacker, but it should have been, no, it's not. I'm a linebacker. I just need to be the best football player possible so that I could play special teams and do great on special teams. So then when I did get my opportunity to play linebacker, I played linebacker. And then at some point one day, maybe I'll only play linebacker. That's how you have longevity. I mean, John Simon's a good friend of mine. He played 10 years in the league. John Simon played special teams and he set the edge. He was an edge setter, but he did a multitude of things. He played 10 years. Nate Ebner played safety and special teams, played 10 years as a special teams guy. Now, he's also the biggest freak I ever coached because he also played in Olympics and rugby after coming off an NFL season to go make it to the Olympics to then go back and play another NFL season. Freak, right? But that's what he did.
I interviewed Nate. I think he had a book that came out a couple of years ago.
He did.
Man, what a fascinating backstory that dude has.
Oh yeah, 100. I was in there, man. It was Slay the Selfish Beast. It was
That's right. I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
Slay the selfish, feed the good. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the first guy that I think I ever heard, and I think he was repeating a Patriots coach or something, but it was you don't know what you don't know, which is something that I've heard. I don't know if it was around before that or I've just you recognize it a little bit more after you hear it for the first time. I see and hear that saying everywhere, and I've got to give Ebner credit for at least imparting that piece of information on me first because it's so true. It's something I tell my kids all the time because I've got a couple of smart kids. I'm like, you don't need to prove yourself as the smartest person in the room. As a matter of fact, oftentimes the smartest person in the room is somebody who says the least. They're sitting back and listening and gaining knowledge or gaining insight on the other people who feel it is their place to do the most talking.
Yep.
Sometimes it's good to impart that knowledge, but you don't want anybody to ever think that you look at yourself as the smartest person in the room because you don't know what you don't
Yep.
know.
No, facts. Facts.
Okay, I promise. Last nerdy question before we get to Texas, Ohio State. You talked about ankle mobility a little bit earlier. Typically, are you having people do ankle rockers and like commando stretches, things like that for the ankle mobility?
No, I mean, there's some beta distraction. I mean, that's really simple. We have there's a lot. There's like slant boards. There's beta distractions. You got to look at what is their injury history. What are some of those things? And I mean, heck, we just had our AD sentence going back to play. And we're talking ankle mobility, but there's ways of doing that. I like the banded distraction, but it's also
What you
like
say band? I don't know what that is. What is a banded
it's
distraction?
just, it's just basically you take a band, you put it around your ankle, it's tied to another one, a rack of some sort, and you just step out, and then you just get forward, like forward lean to where you're getting that knee over that front toe, and then you got to work at multiple angles, whether it's over the
Mm.
big toe, middle toe, pinky toe, but like you're just getting that band pulling against the joint to help increase range of motion. They also might have really tight calves and soleuses, so that might be something else to look at because they're jumping so much or they're running so much, and it's like, all right, well, how do we loosen that up, right? Whether that's tissue manipulation or cupping, it's just like how do we work that tissue? So it's just a combination of all those different things and understanding that they need to something that they need to work on. But it's like it's even where I'm having our AD's kid and he's returned to play. He had a surgery on his patella, and it's just like, all right, what's your hamstring strength? Because now you're starting to get into the running volume, and I'll test him in between a workout just to see what it is after a hard run. Where is he favoring it? And we use sports science and data. And I'm like, look, you're favoring your left side because of that. I just want you to be cognitive of it because before you go out to practice, we got to make sure that your hamstrings are activated. And when you are in the weight room, it's another opportunity of microdosing some time under tension to do an isometric hold in lengthened position for that right hamstring in particular, because we don't ever want to see him over a deficit asymmetrically on it. But you got to be cognitive of it. And then when you go back, here's your plan that you just did. Here's all the things that you just did. He was probably a couple of weeks behind the eight ball when I got him, but I'm still was not able to microdose enough volume to equate to what 3 days of practice are going to look like for him. So they're going to have to do a good job of progressing him and acclimating him back into pads because I think overall this week we were able to accumulate 8,000 yards, really first week of like true hardcore kind of running. And we supplement that 8,000, but then we also did a little bit on the bike, the seat down, just working on a little bit of acceleration just to accumulate some volume without being like on the turf or on the grass. So it's a process, man. It's a process.
Damn, Anthony, I want to go to the armory to train for some beach volleyball with you at some point in the next year, but that is probably not very likely. All right, let's talk a little Texas Ohio State now. The reason why we are talking today, that game is it's a little bit more than a week away, and it really kicks off the 2025 season. Texas fans feel pretty good about their chances this year, and I think while a lot of love is given to Arch Manning nationally, for Texas fans, it's much more about what was a really good defense possibly being even better this year. For you as a guy who follows Ohio State as closely as you do, you've worked with a lot of these guys with conditioning and strength training. What is your biggest reason for optimism for the Buckeyes in 2025?
Oh, shoot. Well, I mean, completely different team. I think they got four great captains. You got a coach that's won a national championship. So right now, in the world of college football, it's Ryan Day, Dabo Sweeney, and Kirby Smart that I think are the only guys that have won them, if I'm not mistaken. Well, Harbaugh went to the NFL. That's a whole different ball game. We ain't gonna talk about it. But that's really what it is. So you rely upon the eye of the coach and knowing what they need. Uh, I would say this. Let's start offensively. I don't know if there's a more talented wide receiver room in the country. That's a fact. Um, Tight end room. I don't think there's a more talented, deeper tight end room in the country than the one at Ohio State. All right, I guess I could digress and go back a little bit to the wide receivers. Jeremiah Smith is a freak, folks. I mean, he's all of 6'3", 225 pounds. That bench press is 225 20 times. He runs over 23 miles an hour. Uh, and he's just an absolute specimen that does not talk, that just handles his business. He's a pro of pros at 19, 20 years old. I mean, it's crazy. I think he is 19. It's crazy. It's crazy. Carnell Tate would be a number one wide receiver probably on every other college. He's your other wide receiver. So you got two of those dudes. Carnell Tate, honestly, good for him, was an Iron Buckeye, which he grew a lot. Iron Buckeye, you got to do a lot of right things and a lot of competitive excellence throughout the entire summer to get that award. He got one. And you got Brandon Ennis, who was voted captain, kind of filling in for that Emeka Ibuka role of that slot. But Emeka, as we're seeing with Tampa Bay, is a dude that can play all positions. Really, really good wide receiver. Brandon is just an absolute dog, great teammate, will do whatever is asked from him. But then you also have other young guys like Quincy Porter, Miley Graham, like five-star dudes all over the place. Then you go to the tight end room and you have really deep, really physical tight end room that did a great job last year, asked to do a lot in the run game. But then you add in that Max Clare, who came from Purdue, who is just like another wide receiver on the field. Like the dude for 240 pounds runs wide receiver routes. He is a difference maker. He is really good at what he does, but has gotten better because he's in a more physical tight end room. And you got to be a blocker at Ohio State if you want to play tight end. So he's gotten better, but that's a really deep room. Running back room, you got C.J. Donaldson, transferred in from West Virginia, lost some weight, looks really good, looks fast. James Peoples, who's from San Antonio, Texas, he's right there in the mix. Going to be I think he's a redshirt freshman. He's there, looks a lot like J.K. Dobbins, like runs a lot like J.K. does.
Another
It's going
Texas
to be
guy.
going to be LaGrange. So going to be a good mix, right? So you look at that two-back one, which they had a lot of success last year with Trevion and Q. Then you look at the offensive line, and where the offensive line, they lost a lot of starters last year. The only guy that started their position, that ended their position, the same spot was Josh Fryer. You had a guy who's doing a great job of in the Vikings, and oh my gosh, now I just blanked it. Donnie. Donnie's a Texas guy. He's from Houston. Donnie was gone, but he went from left guard to left tackle. Why he got drafted so high is because he's an absolute dude, by the way.
Hmm.
So you don't have a lot of starter depth, but what you do have is a lot of big time game experience depth. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked a little bit. So versus, I would say probably 4 of the top 10 defensive lines in the country, they played Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame. They did really, really good. And they're all back. And you got a really deep rotation behind them. Right now, Austin Satterfield, he's a captain. He's going to probably be your left tackle. Carson Hitzman is your center. Luke Montgomery is your guard. Guys have been playing well, a lot of growth. Honestly, it's the funnest part of a coach is watching the maturity of dudes and the value that they add to a team as they grow. And then you've had a couple of transfers from Rice Ethan. Oh my goodness. Phil Daniels came from Minnesota. You're kind of like, and then Taylor Shabola. It's kind of like who's that right guard, right tackle mix combo kind of between those three right now. And then you go to the quarterback position. Julian Sanders is starting quarterback. A lot of hype around him. Throws a really good ball. I think the differentiator to the quarterback competition was just the recognition and getting the ball out. Because Lincoln Kielholtz is a hell of a quarterback. A guy, again, we go back to that comment, that specialized from South Dakota. You know, we talked about on the show, is like not a quarterback guru, that goes to that guy all the time, right? Doesn't go to all the camps. He played baseball and basketball and football up there. Really good quarterback, man. And it was a tight battle, but they ended up going with Julian Sand. And I think going into this game from an offensive perspective is who's going to be the team that can run the football and what is the offense that doesn't turn the ball over. That's this game. Because when you look at week one games, and you always say like you grow your most from week one to week two. I'm happy the Texas game is in week one. Not saying I don't wish it was in week two. I'm happy that it's week one. I'm happy that it's at home because the competitive advantages will always be in a defense because Arch Manning started 2 games. I think it was like Louisiana Monroe and like Mississippi State for Quinn Ewers, right? And so doesn't have a lot of starts, a lot of ball, right? Like, been there for 2.5 years, but still not a lot of starts. So you have 2 inexperienced quarterbacks. So where's the competitive advantage? Competitive advantage is on the defensive side of football. And what you're going to be able to do to impact those quarterbacks this is both teams. That's where the edge lies. And then it's like, all right, we got to go look at the defense. What do they do? But I feel really good about our offensive line. And I feel really good about our positions that surround the quarterback position to allow him to be successful. And who is the quarterback that can distribute the football, get it out of their hands, and not turn the ball over in a game like this? That's the team that's going to have the competitive advantage.
Well, the biggest differentiator to me between these two offenses is the experience on the offensive line. Texas has a couple.
One returning starter.
Yeah, exactly. They've got,
and then a guy did Cole Hudson transfer in there?
Cole Hudson has been, and I was about to say this, he's kind of a quasi starter. He's played a bunch of different positions over the last, I think, 2 years in Austin. Yeah. And now he is the bona fide starter at center. But DJ Campbell is the one guy who has started games over the last couple of seasons. Now, Trevor Gooseby, a lot of people look at him as a guy who is in that Kelvin Banks mold, but he has limited reps as a starter. Granted, he started in, I think, the last game of the season for Kelvin Banks against A&M, and then he started in that SEC championship game against Georgia and actually held up pretty well, but there is limited experience along that offensive line. The thing that I think you guys should talk about next week with this matchup with this Longhorns offense is this offense is going to look drastically different versus what you saw in the semifinal last year for a couple of reasons. One, Sark realizes that he's got inexperience at different positions, including along that offensive line and some unproven commodities at wide receiver outside of Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore. But he also has a quarterback that is extremely capable with his legs. It's hard to come up with a perfect comp for Arch Manning. But thinking about what Trevor Lawrence did with Clemson a couple of years ago, Arch Manning has those sorts of abilities where he'll surprise you with his straight line speed. He does have a little bit of missability, and he's got great accuracy all over this field, especially with the deep ball too. So you're going to see a whole lot RPO with this Texas offense to take pressure off of the offensive line, to take pressure off of that running back position, and also give Arch maybe some easier throws early on, short throws that maybe open things up deep down the field before too long.
Yep. I totally agree with that. I'm with you. And that's why I like when it comes to the matchups, right? Texas is going to be different. They're going to be different because their quarterback has a different skill set.
Yeah.
Ohio State defense is going to be different. And that's what's so great about that. Again, that goes back to what is so appealing about this matchup is that, and it's also one of the things too, it's when you look at it, you got 2 brand new coordinators at Ohio State. Chip Kelly goes to the Raiders. You got Brian Hartline pegged to be the offensive coordinator, and then you bring in Matt Patricia. You kind of know what Matt's going to do, but do you? And it's going to be the good thing about like what I love about Matty P coming to Ohio State is that in the NFL, people don't understand this. In the NFL, the coaches aren't the ones that are like acquiring the talent. It's the GM. Your job is to go make those guys successful. So you have to build a game plan. And yes, the foundation of your scheme, obviously in New England, they run a 3-4 and what they do, but go put them in opportunities to be successful and let players play. And when you get to teams like Texas and Ohio State that have a wealth of really talented athletes, how do you best utilize them? And that's something that Matt Patricia does. It's not a scheme to where you got to fit my scheme and, we don't have a guy for that part of my scheme. It's, here's the talent I got. We got a bunch of talented dudes. How do I put the best 11 on the field that can go make plays, and what does that look like? obviously helps when you have a safety like Caleb Downs. People don't realize this. When I was in college, we ran probably my senior year probably ran 80% big nickel
Hmm.
because we had Dante Whitner. But Dante Whitner was just like a Sam linebacker. He was just shorter and lighter, but he could set the edge and he could do some things, which allowed Bobby to go outside and be able to rush the passer and kept AJ and myself in the box. So you run big nickel. Guess what? You're going to see some big nickel when you have to face a running quarterback.
Both,
So
both teams are going to be doing that, by the way, because Jelani McDonald is likely going to be that big nickel or star position for Texas, and he's got some linebacker traits about him.
yep, yep, and that's what it is. It's about finding your identity, but it's also about finding the best 11 and then allowing those guys to play fast and violent. And it's fun for me to go back and going to practice last year versus going to practice this year, where it's like I know what the calls are. Like I don't even know the calls, but I know what is said of the call, and it's like, oh, I know what that play is. It's great. And then now I get to watch like the defense like I know it, as opposed to, oh, this is orange. Well, what's orange? It's like this concept. Well, what's red? It's like, oh, it's this kind of, like I know them now, because I played them. So it's cool. That's why I'm so interested in this matchup.
So, if there's something that gives you pause about your alma mater right now, what is it with regards to them maybe winning this Texas game or having a similar level of success as they did last year?
No, I don't have any pause. I think that they can be an elite team. I just think it's the questions that come out of, how do they take care of the football? When talent is equated, how do they block and tackle week one? Here's the deal. Whatever staff has their guys fundamentally prepared in this game the most is going to be the ones that have the success.
Hmm.
So what staff was able to do that? Because again, you can make adjustments when you don't play premier matchups like this early on, because you can adjust because you have 3 games that lead up to your conference to where you can make your adjustments, whether it's personnel or scheme or whatever. But, man, we're off the rip 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 3, wherever you look at it. It's like, we got to go. So the teams that can do the fundamentals the right way, control the football, and do the things that you got to do, stop the run and run the ball, those are the ones that have sex. I really don't have pause I don't have pause for Texas or Ohio State, because the programs set themselves up to be able to have, annual success, right? You look at the captains that they have. Sonny Styles, he's from Columbus, Ohio. He's a linebacker, switched it from safety to linebacker last year. He's a captain, straight up dude, right? You have Caleb Downs, straight up dude. You have Brandon, dude. Austin's a dude. Like, you look at the leadership on this one, you have the thing that you want to see, I guess, to say pause or concern is, how are those guys able to lead a younger team that lost a lot of veteran presence, when you've seen over the last 2 seasons, it was the Michigan that had 44 seniors on their roster. It was Ohio State that had a crap ton of seniors on their roster. How are they able to lead a younger roster to have and replicate the same amount of success they had the previous season? That's why people are high on Penn State. That's why people are high on Clemson right now. It's because they have veteran quarterbacks with a lot of returning starters. And over the last 2 years, you've seen that the most veteran teams have been the ones that had the success.
I'm going to have to see it happen for James Franklin before I believe that Penn State can get over that hump. I'm with you on Clemson, though. They've got so many dudes on both sides of the ball, but especially
Yeah.
defense. Literally 2 defensive linemen that could get drafted in the first round. They've got somebody at every level that very well be a first-round draft pick before it's all said and done. And Kate Klubnik, he's an Austin guy. Speaking of Texas guys, he put on his best Superman cape last year to really help that team get back on track when people were wondering, because Dabo was so slow to adjust to the NIL and transfer portal era in college football, and has people believing in Clemson, the Clemson Tiger football program once again.
Yeah, and I think here's the deal. We're learning this NIL deal, portal deal. The portal thing is a simple fix to me. You should have one portal, and everybody should be on a. First off, I think that every freshman that goes into a program should be on a 2-year contract.
Yep.
And I think after that, you should be able to go as you please, but there's one portal and one portal only.
At the end of the spring, do you have a strong feeling on when that
Well,
one portal should be?
here's what I think. I think they need to move up week 1 to week 0, and I think your national championship should be done and completed the very first week of January.
Thank you, Anthony. It bothers me to no end that college football owns Saturdays through the championship weekend, and then they're putting their playoff games all over the week. Keep the games on Saturdays, man. You're going to be going up against the NFL regardless, unfortunately. It is what it is. Keep those
But
games
not
on
that.
Saturdays. It makes it really difficult for people to stay locked in when they're 10 days apart, sometimes happening on a Tuesday or a Thursday.
I mean, all you gotta do is you go to that semifinal game, you give them 2 Saturdays, and you go,
Sure.
right? And it's just like you make it like the Super Bowl, but it's the first Saturday of January, and that's it. It's what it is, right? And
Yep.
you can play your other bowl games on those other days, right? And make them really good premier ones, right? But like, why have that type of competition? And you get to own all the days. Like you get to own the Labor Day, like that weekend if you want more. NFL's not starting until the middle of September. So get 3 games, 4 games in before you get to the NFL that's on Sundays, and you own that time slot. And then guess what it does? And here's what I hate about the portal, especially the early one, is if you have guys that want to jump in the portal and you want them to have success, but yet all of a sudden they leave, or other schools are approaching your guys in the midst of a playoff run, which happened last year to Ohio State. Like guys are getting calls to go transfer. People know they're transferring, but they're getting calls, and like all of a sudden you play a game and then I'm out. Well, that dude played a vital role on special teams. And so all those reps that they got, live bullets that they got, are gone. They're out of the building. Now I got to plug somebody into it. I remember watching the Oregon game. And it's like, man, if that guy was here, he makes that play on the punt to down it inside the red zone because he has game experience. He's a veteran guy. You got to be able to manage your roster throughout the entirety of the season, period.
Yep.
Just like the NFL, like you're under a contract, you got to play your contract out for that year. And then you open up that portal immediately after the season, because I will say I do not like the spring portal, because after that, you go into full-fledged spring football, which gives you an opportunity of knowing exactly what you got. Now, if you want that other portal, that's where it's dicey about the full year contract. That's why I think it's just one. And you should know what your team needs before you get to that spring portal. That's just, I understand if you did have two and you had the spring one, but they got to be either then 6-month contracts to where you have them for the biggest thing is that you have them for the entirety of the season so you can have roster management. That's the point.
I think 2-year contracts make sense. And if you break the contract, there is a penalty that you have to pay. Like everybody always talks about coaches being able to go from one place to another. Guess what that involves? A buyout. So there may be a buyout clause if you want to come poach a guy from a Texas or an Ohio State or even a smaller school for that matter. I'm not all about the big dogs just pillaging rosters of these smaller schools that don't necessarily have national championship hopes. You're going to help that school out in the process if you take one of their best players and bring them to your roster.
I mean, look at Sam Houston State had a good year last year, right? Yep. Like Texas State had a good year. I've seen them. Like they're playing good ball. They're working on it. Their guys are developing dudes, and they're going to go to the next level. There should be some type of compensation, whether that's, hey, we repay you the NIL money that they had, because let's not kid ourselves. Like the NIL money of those schools, it's a lot for them to acquire the ones that they got. So what does that do, right? Like that's the hardest part of it, because they wanted them so bad in the building during that early transfer portal. And it I'm not lying to you, it does help when they have that portal before the end of the season. I just don't like it because it gives, like, I know Ethan and Daniels were in during the playoff run. They didn't play, but they practiced and they watched, and that was valuable. But to me, it's not as valuable as making sure I have all my guys and all my things to go accomplish the mission that we're trying to accomplish.
Well, and plus coaches are also having to secure their recruiting classes in early December, and then you're having to keep track of your own guys that time of year as well. It's just too much. I understand any coach that goes from college to the NFL. I completely understand because of just how chaotic that lifestyle has gotten at the college level in the last couple of years. I'm sure you know personal examples of guys that are just completely burnt out as a result of all the extracurricular stuff they're now having to keep track of.
Man, I love coaching. God made me to maximize and serve, and I would 100% do that in a heartbeat, maybe, but I don't because of the lifestyle. It's absolutely terrible. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, and that's where I appreciate Dabo sticking to his guns because it's in Ohio State does it to their own in their own way. It's they don't pay a lot of portal money for unproven guys, but when you're here, we will pay you what you're worth.
Yeah.
But they understand the value now, whether or not that correlates to getting more guys that come in to saying, okay, man, I'm going to go there. I might take less money, but I'm going to be developed, and I feel like I can be developed there more than I can at this place. Those are also the guys that you want, and that's kind of how they've done it, and they've been successful at it. They're not just going to go get a guy to get a guy. They got to get a guy that fits, that will fit in the locker room, will fit into their coaching style. Like those are the guys you got to go after. And if you don't get them, you can't worry about it. And you're not going to just go pick one up for the sake of picking one up because you don't want to disrupt, which in my opinion has probably been the strongest thing that Ohio State has had. And that's the brotherhood, the locker room, the chemistry, right? The culture. You can't, easiest way of not having success is start bringing those people in that are going to absolutely just tear down your culture. You don't want that. You don't want that mess.
All right, last question now, Anthony. I do appreciate the time today. We've gone way over the time that I had suggested to you, so thank you for your patience here. What's your prediction for Texas Ohio State first game of the year? And I have to say this while also reminding people that you absolutely nailed your prediction on Texas and Ohio State 7 months ago. You said Ohio State by I think 14, which is what the final margin was. So,
Yeah.
what are you thinking with next Saturday in Columbus?
I could see, I think the over under is like 44.5 or something like that. And I never like to go the under because you always want to root for like more points because people are scoring. Because you can also be that they scored more on for you than they scored, right? Um, I think it's going to be a 3 point game. I think the spread was 2.5. I think it's going to be a 3 point some capacity. I don't know. I can see 24-21, 21-17, 24-17. How I could even see the over, 27-24. I don't know. I will say I think our kicking game is going to be better this year at Ohio State because he's returning and there's been some good competition. But I just think it's going to be closer than a shootout. And that Texas game was a defensive battle, man. It was good. There were some times, too, where Ohio State made some mistakes that stopped drives. And then also Texas can say the same thing because he gave up a 75-yard screen pass, to Trevion.
Ooh,
Right? I mean, it was 7-7. That puts you up 14-7 going into half.
that was
Like
a
different ball.
backbreaker. That really was a backbreaker.
That was the one. Like of all the things, like of those besides the end zone, and again, Ohio State's defense, veteran defense, I think they had like 6 or 7 goal line stands where they got +7. The Texas game being the 7, where they didn't give up any points. They played really, really good red zone defense. I think they were the best in the country last year.
You guys were good in that red zone, but I also blame Sark for running a really stupid stretch play at the start of that last set
Right
of down.
into the boundary.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God, that's gonna haunt me until we find a way to get over that hump.
The stretch into the boundary is, let me say, it's not my favorite play.
Yeah,
Especially with the hashes in college. It's different when you're in the league. You can do that play in college. I know they say it sets other stuff up on the other side, but it's just terrible.
no.
I can't stand it. But you're right, because that was a great fill by Lathan and Caleb
Oh
on
yeah,
that play to go to, I think it was 3rd and 8, right? To put him in that position to then get that strip sack. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a really tight game. And I just think Ohio State at home, first game of the year, 2 brand new quarterbacks. And you just don't know what to expect. Like that's the cool thing about this game is you just don't know what they're going to look like offense and defense because both teams have lost people and there's question marks on both. It's just, who do you trust more? Do you trust, like on the Texas offensive side of the ball, do you trust Arch Manning and an unproven offensive line with still some dudes, right? Versus Ohio State's defense that has returning quarters and safeties. And I will say this, to strengthen their defense, their DBs and their linebackers. They're back 6 or 7 or whatever you want to call them. Like they are really good.
Hmm.
You wait, like when you guys see Arvell Reese, who's 6'4", 245 pounds, and Sonny, who's 6'4", 245 pounds, run the way that they run and play with violence the way that they play with violence, they're bumpy. And that's where it's like, okay, can those guys run with an arch? Yeah, they're just as fast. They're just bigger. So it's like, what does that look like? And then Texas's defense versus a first year starter, right? An offensive line that has some big time game experience. How do they gel? But then can they protect saying to get the ball out to the playmakers of Jeremiah Smith, Cardinal Tate, Brandon Ennis, Max Clare? Like, what does that look like? So let me tell you something. It should not be at noon. It should be prime time.
I
It should be
know.
so. It should be so juicy because it's not for the sake that it's big noon kickoff. It's for the fact that I played in the first Texas Ohio State matchup in the shoe at night with Vince versus Vince Young, and it
Incredible.
was it was so electric. It was so special. I mean, there was 300,000 people in that vicinity that night.
Well, you were part of the 2006 game also, weren't you?
No, no, no.
Oh,
That was
okay.
in
Well,
Austin.
that game was the return trip was in Austin. That was
I
another
know.
night game, and it was another great game too.
Won by the road team. Both of those games,
Exactly.
right? So you just, and again, I go back to like the difference was Vince Young, Heisman Trophy winner, but you know we had Troy Smith was out the first game and they were splitting time in that one. And that was a little bit of our subtlety in offense because we had 3 turnovers on Texas, I think, and only got 3 points out of it in
Yeah.
in their territory. That, for all intents and purposes of that game, I think it was 25-22. That was the difference maker, that we didn't score on those possessions to allow it to get to where there's a touchdown pass late in the game to win the game. But
Where
yeah,
where
like
where were you on that play where Lima Swede caught that touchdown pass?
covering y'all's tight end,
He wasn't
right?
open.
Yeah, shoot, man, terrible. I still remember it. I still remember it. It was bad. Anyways, yeah, it was great. I just wish everybody got to experience that game, right, like that at night, like it should be. And guess what? I understand Texas not wanting to move the game to a Sunday night, so I understand that.
Uh,
Play it at noon.
yeah, I don't fault us at all for saying hell no to the
No,
night game in Columbus.
well,
Who
they
I
wanted to move
blame
it
for all
back.
of
They
that,
they wanted to move
Anthony,
it
I
back.
blame Fox for going big noon kickoff like they did. And I get it. You wanted to find a spot to put a really cool game on. The best college football games belong at night, to your point. Period.
100%. Because why? We grew up with what? Friday Night Lights. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like the cool thing is we're doing this. We're talking first Friday football, in Ohio, Friday Night Lights, being at DeSoto and Highland Park and Carrollton. Like those are special, man. Because back then it was Standard Stadium. It's right off of 35, huge stadium. It was like the first big one where everybody shared. But like I remember Euless, Trinity, and like those little like and the Highlander Stadium, right? The place where Doak Walker played.
Yep.
Like there's 8, 10, 15, 20,000 people, man. Like that's why you play them at night. They don't show up at noon on Saturday to play those games, or midday on Friday. Like everybody's off work. Everybody's had opportunity to go do whatever they want to do with whatever beverage they want and like have fun and watch it, man. It's cool. It's a great experience. And that's where you come from in high school to college, that you love those games. Plus, Ohio State at night, just like Texas at night, is just a different animal in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for the time today, man. I'm excited about this game as you are too. Hopefully, we can talk again during the season. I don't want this to be the last time because you and I, and at least selfishly for me, nerd out in really fun ways, talking about working out and fatherhood, and of course football as well. But if nothing else, I think Ohio State's returns the trip to Austin next year.
Yeah,
Hopefully, you can make it for that, considering your Texas roots. If so, we're gonna have to get together in person and hang out before the game.
that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, got to do that for sure.
All right. He's talked about a lot of dudes during this conversation. He's a dude himself. Anthony Schlegel, uh, national champ, Ohio State, has done a lot of training in the NFL and at the college level. And he's also co-host on the Bobby Carpenter Show each day, midday. And he is a dude, and I'm not just saying that because I watched him kick ass in Little League Baseball and Carrollton Farmers Branch and Rec Specs back in the day. Anthony, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for the time, brother.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.